Well met, everyone. I am Rich DeLitch, and today I'm giving you a little bit of an update on my world building thing about this SKANEBLIGHT Zergling Starship Troopers inspired creature. So, what we have on screen here is a little bit of a change. The overall direction is the same. There are these creatures walking around on my world, but instead of dealing with the blight fire and the various holes they create, the general, you know what, let me pop over. Might be a little curious about that. I'll explain that. This will be a pretty quick video, just giving you an update showing you where I'm at. I'm actually laying it out in Adobe InDesign, so I'm getting it ready for PDF for release format. Now, granted, I'm creating an entire world, so I've got a few hundred pages to create, but I've got the overall aesthetic as far as the design of the border elements and the various dividers and whatnot. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to just continue to move forward. And as I come up with ideas, I have a place where I can sort of plug and play. And I know that it is getting to some kind of a finished format rather than just staying in an idea mode or in Google Docs mode or just on some random folder in my computer. It's actually something that I'm currently creating and is going to be ready to be published at some point in the future. The other thing, the layout sort of approach to design and building does is it kind of informs me as to what I need to create next. When I have a page that feels like there's too many words or perhaps not enough words and I have a bunch of blank space, I kind of think, do I need to put a piece of art here? And therefore, do I need to go and create that art? Do I need to put a map here or something to that effect? So I'm going to call I don't know the name of the world yet. I talked about that on previous video. I haven't even made a world map yet. That's probably coming up pretty soon. But I'm kind of working from the inside out. I'm first talking about the creatures, as you know already a little bit, the SKANEBLIGHT, and their population on the world. And I will slowly then start to talk about who are the various people that interact with these creatures. What other creatures are there? So is it everything that you would find in the monster manual and so on? How do the various races, cultures, civilizations, the things that your characters could play, right? The human barbarian or the elven archer, whatever ranger, how do they interact with these SKANEBLIGHT bug type things? And what effect does that have on the terrain? Does it inform me that I need to create every city with walls because of how threatening these things are? How high would those walls be? And that's what I mean by building sort of from the inside out. Who is there? What do they do? How do they interact with the world, the terrain? How do they change it? You know, you've got these large legs which act as sort of great swords pounding into the ground. You might have a very holy, and not holy as in Halo, a planet with a bunch of potholes, so to speak. So it starts to inform me as to how I want to build the map and what sort of terrain and location there is. So I'm calling it the Bug Hunter's World Book. That's the name of the PDF, the 200-page, whatever, how many pages there are. And here we have a picture of the guy. For scale, I changed some of that a little bit. They're about twice the size of a human, male human. So you can see here I've already got the title. You know, and like I said, this is done. This cover's done, so it's out of my head. I know what the front cover of the book is going to look like. It's kind of like when they say, hey, I have an idea for a novel. But what separates the Neil Gaiman, the Stephen King, the Patrick Rothfuss, the J.K. Rowling? It's not just in scribbled format, you know, as I saw the documentary of J.K. Rowling. You know, it's not just scribbled on random loose leaf paper and then stuffed inside some manila folder and sat on your shelf. No, there is a point where it is typed out, right? It is ready for editing. So when someone's like, oh, you're a novelist, you know, you're a writer, cool. What books have you written? Well, I haven't written any book yet. I just have an idea of it. This helps me start writing the book. So front cover is done. There's page 1. Second page is done, laid out. Like I said, keeping that same font. I want to follow along the theme of play first, study later. So I want to get players invested in the world. As I say here, the next few pages will offer you enough to get you talking among friends, running through adventures, and invested into this world. When the time is right, there's multiple campaigns worth of detail on these pages that will occupy many of your evenings. What's next are the good bits about this place, the bits that are relevant for your next session. I talk about that all the time. How do we get it to the table now? The bits that get you excited about a world, and the bits that answer 3 important questions. What do the heroes of this place look like? Why are they needed? And Do you even need to be a hero? Can I be a villain instead? And then a little bit just the overview on what I've changed. So if I pull this picture back up, here's a scale chart, right? I've created sort of three, the reference of scale is still the same. There's our 6-foot male human. I've created 3 types of Skaneblight, okay? And so you have in 3 categories so far. I may change their labels and their names, but we have a category 1, which you can see is only 3 feet high, but it's this, look how large it is. You know, it's a good 12 feet in, you know, horizontally. There's the top view of what it looks like. It has these large suckers that you can see, and it kind of pulls itself forward and moves above ground that way, but then it digs those suckers into ground. They're the feeders. So the general idea on the direction I'm going now versus the blight fire holes is there's this ancient magic that's been left over from spells being cast, and it's left this residue that the folk of the world, the normal people, even monsters, whatever, nothing, no one, no living thing can see and interact with this. They know it exists. They've heard, scholars have studied, kind of like when you detect magic, or a Xanathar's Guide to Everything has the details on how do you identify a spell as it's being cast, or a spell that's currently in place or that was recently cast. Same sort of concept. The scholars have learned and studied that magic was once cast here, but the leak, the residue, sort of the cooling off period of that spell can't be seen, it can't be interacted with, they can't do anything with it. However, it has drawn the Skaneblight to this world, and which is this race of insect bug-like creatures, zergling things. And they feed on the leak. But what happens is, as they feed on the leak, there's some reaction in their body where this leak, this sort of invisible magical residue left from ages ago, right? The ancient wizards 500 years ago, whatever. The interaction in their body, whether it interacts with the oxygen in their bloodstream or just their blood supply, whatever, their digestive system, it now takes the leak and it actually turns it into something physical, where when any Skaneblight, any one of these 3 can eat it, can eat the leak, right? And they consume, the leak is present everywhere in the world in various pockets. Sometimes it may be present in an entire mile radius, whatever. The leak is in everything. It's in the ground, it's in the soil. It can be sometimes just sort of an invisible film of residue. Kind of like, think of in the crafting world, glitter, right? That shit gets everywhere. You can't get rid of it. Spill a bottle of glitter, you'll be finding it for ages. So, invisible glitter. That's going to be my new definition for leak, right? And I'll write that somewhere. So, one moment, folks. I'm a popular guy, so I'm always getting calls. Okay, sorry. So, there's this leak. They feed on it, and when it's in their system, it crystallizes at some point into these actual purple crystals, okay? And the Skaneblight now wander the land. Sometimes they'll burrow and stuff. They will often burrow when they have leak within them. What they do with the leak, I don't know yet. I don't know if I'm ever going to detail that out. Maybe I can leave it kind of some suggested ideas of what people have thought they've done with it, which leaves open space for future DMs or DMs that are running this world. But regardless, they now start glowing a little bit purple. And other creatures, humans, the races of the world, they see the Skaneblight wandering purple. And now they know that the leak is in a physical form. So if you kill the Skaneblight, I can actually loot these crystals, these purple crystals of ancient magical energy. And the sort of gameplay effect that I'm going to have with that is, if you sort of use it like a, think cheese grater concept. There's a sword on an anvil, and I take this crystal and I scrape it over the top of the blade. It now is the beginning process of turning that normal sword into a +1 sword. If you have one of those crystals inside of your spell component pouch, maybe there's a 50% chance it doesn't consume an otherwise consumed material component. Maybe a concentration spell that would last a minute lasts an additional minute, or a round longer, or whatever, right? Maybe it creates wild magic effects if you take a bunch of them and throw them inside of a satchel and you leave that in an area. Whatever. There's going to be some arcane, divine, magical benefit to it, right? It can be the foundation to creating new magic items. Maybe it's unseen magical power where something that in the player's handbook is not normally a ritual spell can now be cast as a ritual if you have crystallized leak, whatever. It's now a resource. It's something that, besides the interaction between the Skaneblight, who you need them because they're the only ones that can feed on unseen energy to create it, it has now created an interaction between what I'm going to call the Ilkraven, who are basically Skaneblight hunters, because, whether they're being hunted or they're hunters that are working for some king or some, arcane society that is saying, hey, we want that stuff. But it's created that interaction, but also it's created sort of another secondary layer of economy and guilds and people that are trading in these things and thieves that are always looking out for it, so on and so forth. So the idea, though, is the Skaneblight are now starting to number in the tens of thousands. And that is sparked by the idea of, at some point, when you look at 15 minutes into a StarCraft game and you look at what the Zerg player's base looks like and you see that creep, right? You start to realize, I think we're having a problem here. Like, we're getting World War Z zombie swarmed at this point. There are now tens of thousands of any number in combination of these three Skaneblight types. And now it's starting to get, what's the sentence that I wrote in the actual document? They were previously quiet beasts that posed no threat, but once they filled themselves with magic, they were hunted. Today, they number in the thousands, and it'd be difficult to say who is the hunter and who is the hunted. And that's the kind of overall theme of this world. Like I said, the world book itself, what you would buy as the campaign setting, is going to be called the Bug Hunter's World Book. But whatever the name of the world is, the Skaneblight populated, and that's sort of the thing, is it used to be they were hunted, but they were now, as they're being threatened, they're starting to spawn more, or they're breeding more, or wherever they're coming from beneath the ground. There's more of them present, and now they're starting to not wait until they're attacked. They're just now attacking on sight. And when you look at this, they're no joke. They're giant sized, They're massive things. So category 1, they consume the most. They can hold the most. A lot of times when you have the leak in them, the Skaneblight have the leak, they will start to, they can't hold it very long. They have to start processing it and turning it into that crystallized form. And after minutes, Skaneblight category 2 and 3, that leak will start to sort of seep back out into the land. Whereas these category 1 guys, they're made to be the feeders. Can they defend themselves? Sure. They've got this kind of burrowing spike. The other thing, though, is the category 1s are never seen without a category 2 with them. Category 2s they're the warrior types. They're the ones that are inherently more aggressive. They're all sentient. And I think I indicated that these guys, both 1 and 2, would be like an intelligence of 9. So they kind of know what they're doing. This category 3, though, they can feed, but they only fly. They don't move on the ground. They also can't burrow. They just fly. And I'm thinking the Overlord from StarCraft, right? Their intelligence is a 22. So they're sort of the hive mind, if you will. They're the brains behind the operation. And the overall idea of why they're consuming it, as I said, I don't know 100% why they're here and why they're eating the leek. But it's created this sort of previously symbiotic relationship between those that existed prior and now these guys coming to the world. They believe that there's sort of a category 4, which is like ascension to almost a godlike, a hive mother. And they, whether a category 1 consumes enough leek and they turn into a 2 and a 2 turns into a 3, they believe that beyond the 3, the leader of the Skaneblight turns them into this godlike form, which might give them some level of power. And maybe they believe that the leak is what helps them transition to that period. So maybe why that's after the leak. But the bottom line is we've got an interesting world with these 3 different types that look different. They attack differently. They're more aggressive now because they were once being hunted and now they're like, enough of this shit. I'm attacking back. What are those threats? Just on a real literal, when they're swarming the walls, cities need to build defenses now and gather up more militia. But also, what are the ramifications of this crystallized leak being present in certain places and sort of the infighting of it, right? Look at a post-apocalyptic world or a Walking Dead. First, it's sort of zombies versus the survivors. But after a while, it's the survivors that are sort of against themselves, and that becomes the conflict and the internal thing where it's not even the Skaneblight anymore, you know? So now it's a group, you know, a society of elves that have access to a bunch of Skaneblight that they've gotten from their elven hunters, but you have a human kingdom in the north that is like, I'm not going to even hunt the Skaneblight. We're just going to go attack those elves and steal all the shit they have. So you have that kind of relationship, right? And another page I have, so past the introduction, is we've got page 3 done, where I just talk about what are the races you can play. It's all of the ones in Player's Handbook, plus goblins and orcs from Volo's Guide. There's no Underdark per se. There's caverns because the Skaneblight come from these twisted caverns beneath the ground. So there's definitely miles and miles of, what is the Lord of the Rings? Mordor, not Mordor, Moria. There's miles and miles of underground, but there's no real Underdark per se, so there's no Drow and Duergar in my world. Or in this world, I should say. So I just list out what are the playable races, and then all the classes from the Player's Handbook are all viable. So at least you know right away, what can I be in this world? So what kind of a hunter would I want to be, or what kind of guardian would I want to be that's defending against those that are trying to steal my city's leak? And then I am going to create a new subclass for the ranger called the bug hunter. So they're the ones that, various attributes. So that's kind of where I am next, is I think I'm going to create a map pretty soon. I'm going to stat out these 3 monsters per, monster manual layout. I'm going to go run through the create a monster manual thing, or DMG thing. I've run a video on that. So I'm going to kind of stat them out, and maybe at different levels. So there's like a lower level category 2 and then a higher level category 2, things like this. I'm going to stat those out. And then I'm going to have to spend some time with creating this bug hunter thing and trying to wrangle it in as some sort of a balanced thing so that it doesn't feel like it's too overpowered from the other ranger options, but something that feels thematic with the world. So you can see it's blank pages from here. This is just a copy and paste. So that's where I'm at. But I think by taking that and breaking it down, doing these videos, as I said, it kind of keeps me tied into the world. It kind of keeps me invested. It keeps me producing. And then by knowing that I need to take it to this next step, even though if I want 200 pages, what do they say? You don't walk 1,000 miles without taking your first step. I don't know who said that, but I did. 3 pages are done, completely done. Like, they're ready to be printed. So if I'm doing a 200-page book, if I keep doing this 3, 4, 5 pages a day, 3-4 months from now, we've got 200 pages versus 3-4 months from now, I just have the ideas of what I want on 200 pages. There's a big difference. So that's sort of my tip for today, if you will. Get into some sort of design scheme, some actual software program in whatever fashion of what does it need to get to, right? No matter what ideas I have in Word and other written form, get it out of your head first off and write something, create something, draw something. But this InDesign program is the actual interface that I'm going to use to file export. I mean, I do this right now. If I said my world was just going to be 300 pages, 4 pages, well, look what I just did. It's going to pop up. There it is. Yes, it says 10 pages because I already have the pages laid out, but I can send this out on Patreon or to YouTubers or whatever, a free download link. Hey guys, go here to download my PDF. There it is, right? So get it to some sort of finished format and just go page by page and work through it. So I hope that helped kind of give you a little insight into this world, but also just the process of, if you're in the process of making your own thing, maybe not as grand, and you just want to do a module, you want to do a couple of monster creations, whatever it may be. So there it is. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.